Okay, this video is called What is the Difference Between Knowledge and Wisdom? Michael Crichton, MD, the great writer, he said, an animal just tries to survive. And, an animal has to be in touch with its environment. A rabbit walks out onto a path. It looks around. Is there a hawk in the tree? Is there a snake in the grass? Is there, a bunch of coyotes are over there? Where's my burrow? Where's the food? Okay, and a human needs to be aware of their environment as well, or they also are not likely to live long. Many highly educated people have a lot of knowledge in their head, but very little wisdom, and they actually promote the loss of the survival of their own people, the genocide, if you will. Okay, so modern art is like genocide of art. Okay, it's a disaster. People should not accept this garbage called modern art. We'll talk about that in another lecture, but it's an insult, to go into a building where there's a statue of feces and claim that that's art. That's a mockery of you, if you know. Okay, I have Irish male friends who tell me how great birth control pills are, and Irish female friends and relatives who say how great abortion is. Yeah, right. Those are the things that have diminished the Irish population. Irish people used to be an important part of America, okay? They used to have all these big neighborhoods and churches and dioceses, and they contributed a lot to the United States. I think the apex was JFK, and after JFK got bumped, the Irish have progressively been going downhill since then and letting their parishes fall apart, their neighbors fall apart. Irish people in the modern world think they're Americans and that America likes them because they have a big parade on St. Paddy's Day. They don't understand. The Irish are one of the most hated groups in the United States and are being pushed towards extinction, extermination. Okay, depopulation and atheism equals the Dolores Stroke. I'm going to go into a little bit of King Arthur legend because it's related to Christianity. It's related to a type of symbolism that helps you understand what's going on. So this is called the Dolores Stroke. The Dolores Stroke. Dolor means pain, like in Latin or Spanish. All right. And it came from this knight Balin. He was sort of a knight who meant well, but he was impetuous and violent, and he drove the spear into the crotch of the Fisher King, King Pellam. Okay, and this made King Pellam impotent and not able to produce an heir to his reign, and his country fell apart. Okay, it led to a wasteland. All right. So the Fisher King Pellam, he was the guardian of the Holy Grail. There's the Holy Grail. A lot of great symbolism in all these King Arthur stories. Okay, and he was speared in the crotch by Sir Balin, the savage. Okay, and this was with the spear of Longinus that had pierced the side of Christ and the chest. Okay, and then, like I said, King Pellam's country just fell into ruin. It progressively got worse and worse, and then this Sir Balin, the impetuous knight, got in a fight with his brother, and they both killed each other. And of course, that reminds me of the symbolism of the Protestants fighting with the Catholics. Okay, you see where this is all going? The people think they're smart with their birth control pills and all their abortions. They don't reproduce their population, and then they fight each other like a bunch of dummies. The Protestant and the Catholics just making each other miserable for no reason. The Protestants caused 99% of that trouble. I'm well familiar with the history of England and Ireland. Okay, and it led to their kingdom becoming weak, like a wasteland. And what's happening now is they're being taken over. All right. So King Pellam's wound could only be cured by the blood of Christ. Of course, that's Christianity. Come on. Nietzsche also said the focus for knowledge rather than for wisdom leads to a slave mentality. That's also true. You see all these university professors with their advanced degrees, and they can rattle off the lingo, verbiage in their own field, but they're morons. Okay, they're socialist, communist morons. Okay, and they promote things that are bad for their students, bad for their universities, bad for the country. Okay, wisdom comes from studying good role models and history. You study the history of the ancient Greeks, the fall of Rome, the Renaissance, and then what happened in the 1900s. That's enough. That right there, you'll be able to understand events. And you should also know something about the Bible, because a lot of stuff comes from the Bible. If you think reading the Bible is a waste of time, then you're a complete ignoramus. A tremendous amount of historical correlations come out of it, not to mention all our literature and related things and most of our art. Okay, wisdom also comes from analyzing one's own goals and behaviors, having metacognition. Okay, a physician, an MD, has knowledge of medicine, but they don't know much about health and have wisdom about how to get healthy or cure a patient. with regard to the chronic diseases. Somebody who studies, holistic stuff, nutrition, epidemiology, analyzes their personal experience, they'll acquire a lot more wisdom. Now the healthcare system is going crazy talking about MAID, M-A-I-D, medical assistance in dying. That's insane. Okay, so we're not going to go into that. Getting back to what's the current events in the USA, we had the recent Maui massacre. Okay, what a disaster that is. We got forest fires going on all over the place, not just in USA, but in Canada, in Europe, and in other continents and countries. Okay. I remember talking to these Eastern Europeans, and they told me, when World War II came, they had their grandparents and other persons who went off into the forest to live. They said that was the place where you were safe. Okay, well, nowadays, they're burning down all the forests. There is no forest to go to, and you're going to be forced into these 15-minute cities, which are forms of electronic concentration camps, and you're going to be eating bugs until they bump you off. Okay, our farmland's been sold to China and to others that are not interested in feeding Americans. There's been many forced closures of farms, further diminishing the food supply. Chemical trains have been dumped into the rivers, like Ohio and many other places. There's chem-you-know-what in the sky. Okay, there's this this stuff right here that's being put on our fruits and further damaging our food supply. There was a big fire in the big train station recently. That's sort of the central hub for all the food distribution in the United States. There's a big push to get rid of people's gas cars and force them into these electronic pieces of crap that can be taken over by remote control. And other countries are turning their back on that stupid idea. Like, you're going to trust a car to understand a person's, facial gestures and hand signals when they're trying to tell you to go or not go at a light or a stop sign. BS. Okay, we're being told that we should eat bugs and own nothing and be happy about it. This climate change is sort of a nonsense cover story to try to explain away all these fires and explain away the fires, both burning up the forests, burning up Hawaii, burning up the food plants. Okay, and how ridiculous is that? If the persons who ran the world were really cared about climate change and it wasn't just a big joke, they wouldn't have destroyed Nord Stream oil pipeline. They wouldn't be making all these fires. They're doing it obviously because it's just a environmentalism cover story to get people to accept all kinds of nonsense that they otherwise would have a harder time accepting. Christians are being made into second-class citizens. They're trying to ban the Bible from schools. They're trying to make the Bible illegal. And I'm telling you, this is just standard communist stuff. The Dem Party is a communist party, okay? Of course they're going to make the Bible illegal. Of course they're going to forbid it in schools. They're going to get rid of all the Christian schools. That's all coming. They've already burned down, Notre Dame Cathedral in France, burned down a lot of other churches. They're going to burn down as many of them as they can. That's what's coming. I mean, you have a choice. It's either communism or Christianity. And all these people think, oh, Christianity's so bad. Christianity, the organized Christian churches is pretty much of a joke. They don't have any influence on a person if a person doesn't want to be influenced by them. That's good. They can't do much to you. That's what you want. If you want to spend time with them, great. But if you don't have to. On the other hand, when you got, who telling you what to do, your big, you know what I'm talking about, your brother, so to speak, you got to do what you're told. You got a fist in your face, okay? Here's a good quote by Arthur Schopenhauer about wisdom. Students and scholars of all kinds aim as a rule only at information, not at insight. It never occurs to them that information is merely a means, a stepping stone to insight, but in itself has little or no value. Thinking in search of insight is what makes a man a philosopher. For the man who studies to gain insight, books and studies are merely rungs on the ladder of which he uses to climb to the summit of wisdom. Okay, yeah, Schopenhauer was brilliant. He's a little bit of a crazy old grouchy guy, but man, he was brilliant. I got a lot of good ideas from him about how to write better and think better. So anyways, that's the point. What you want is insight, knowing what to do, knowing what is the right thing to do, knowing what is good, what is bad. Just memorizing a bunch of stuff to take a test, that doesn't make you wise. Okay, here's what it's all about. All this Zen Buddhism stuff is kind of a joke, okay? That's not going to change anything. Either we're going to have Christian values or we're going to have satanic communist values. And right now, Satan is kicking his butt. I wish I didn't have to say that, but that's the truth, okay? Freedom, free speech, all these other things we take for granted. Private property, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. All of that stuff has progressively been taken away. And unless people wake up and realize that and start helping each other, things are just going to get worse. And I hope they don't, but sort of going in that direction. Here's where freedom comes from. It was a bunch of white men, okay? It was not diversity. It was a bunch of white Christian men, okay? 98+% were all a bunch of Christians. All these pastors were a big part of pushing this. And it was based on, the state's constitutions and then working towards Thomas Jefferson's Declaration of Independence. They had mass in the same buildings where they did all their politics, okay? And this is one of the reasons why white Christian men are the number one target of the Democratic Party, which is the American Communist Party. It's because they are the only ones that are remotely capable of potentially preventing communism, okay? So once they're gone and they're doing their best to genocide them, then once they are gone, everyone else, as far as the Democrat Communist Party is concerned, is easy to make into a slave, okay? But know where it comes from. It's good to know where freedom comes from. And then a lot of people, they think science is, the modern religion. Science is a joke, okay? Why do I say science is a joke? Because most of what people think is science is just what they're told. You must think this. You must agree to this. That's not really science. That's why every drug has all these studies saying it's good. Every popular food that sells for a big profit, caffeine, MSG, nuts, soy, olive oil, they've all got studies saying that they're good for you, okay? But if you look back at older data, you will see that it's not real science, okay? It's bogus, it's fake. That's why, you need actually, I think, Christian ethics to have the best science, because you have to value the truth over everything else. Once you value money, then everything goes to money. Okay, and here's a joke of a meme cartoon here that basically nowadays people think science is God, and somebody just says this is science, and they like take their brain out. It's like giving them a lobotomy. Okay. Most of what you hear called science is just bogus. All these drugs prescribed for all these chronic diseases that don't work, they've all had a study that based on science says they're good. What they do is have some minuscule theoretical benefit, let's say 5% or something, and then they have a whole bunch of side effects. They cover up all the side effects, and then they go, well, look, you get this 5% benefit. It's a big joke, okay? A smart person becomes a low-fat vegan, doesn't take all these pills like all the chumps do. Okay, where does freedom come from? We talked about it. It comes from Christianity, a code of values, morality for society. They respect the 10 Commandments. They try to be nice to each other. They give each other the benefit of the doubt. They try to help each other. They believe that humans are created in the image of God and therefore entitled to natural rights like property, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. If you don't have that in atheism, you're just a talking monkey. Talking monkeys are put in cages, okay? And that's what's coming if we don't, turn the country around and make things better. Okay, capitalism, laissez-faire capitalism, where you're rewarded for working hard and for doing good or for having a talent, where everybody has a chance to improve their life. That's what you want, okay? Ayn Rand, she came from communism, or like around 1920s. Her family, all their property was taken away from them. They had to flee the country. And she comes in, and people are starving to death in Russia. She comes to the United States, and she sees all these giant skyscrapers in New York, all this incredible wealth and sports and all this stuff, and she was like in awe of it. Okay, the Constitution, that was made to help us be free. The founding fathers a lot of them were geniuses. Thomas Jefferson, Ben Franklin, some of the other ones, and there were lots of great men, Adams and G.W., etc. And, they had an idea of tyranny around the world, of what they'd experienced from England as well. So they really wanted to try to make a constitution and the Declaration of Independence to promote prolonged freedom. But, Christianity had to go with that, and Christian values, okay? And, Christianity's got all kinds of problems. And a lot of people say, well, Christians are a bunch of dummies. Okay, well, the reason why there's so many stupid Christians, and that is true, is because it allows everybody to join. It's just the way the world is. Most people are not that smart, okay? Most people are functionally illiterate, and Christianity welcomes all of them in and helps them to have a better life, okay? So it's just inevitable. There's going to be a lot of stupid Christians. It has to be that way. Otherwise, they couldn't, where else are they going to go? A lot of groups don't want anything to do with all these stupid people. Well, stupid people need to have their place too, and Christianity welcomes everybody from the stupid to the smart, and that's one of the good things about it. And it also has a sense of humor. You could joke about it. It promotes the most beautiful art, literature, music ever made in the history of the world by far. Okay, now here's some of the things that are currently happening. According to the news people, they are opening up the jails in Central America, and they send all the people from their jails across our border into the United States. Now, a lot of them are military-age men. Okay, you think that's good for the United States? No. But the Democrat Communist Party, if they can induce anarchy, then they can impose slavery. Okay, as soon as there's more anarchy, the public begs, please save us from the anarchy. And they go, okay, we'll save you, but you'll have to accept a loss of your freedom. They'll go, oh, anything, we'll take it. And they will never get their freedom back. That's what appears to be coming, sadly. Okay, and this isn't just happening across the Mexican border. This is happening all over the world, especially to all the European countries, all the traditionally Christian countries, traditionally Caucasian countries. And that's the other thing. If all these Caucasian Christian countries were so evil, then how come everybody wants to go there? All right? Because they created countries which had some measure of freedom, a lot more than most of the other places in the world. All right? So here's an island that's part of Italy off the coast of Sicily. It's called Lampedusa. And it only had a population of, in the ballpark I heard, of about 5,000 people. Well, guess what? The rulers of the EU, they brought 11,000 illegal aliens, these ones from Africa, saying that they needed Lampedusa. Well, I don't know the exact reason, but almost always is they say, oh, these people need refugee status. Oh, BS. Lots of them are military-age men. They're coming over to take over this island, Lampedusa, okay? You got this giant continent of Africa. Why does it need some tiny little miniature spot in the ocean that only has a population of 5,000, okay? Why should that be the refugee center for a giant continent? It's obvious BS. What they want to do is take over Italy, okay? It's like a military invasion of Italy. They'll go in there, they'll be able to produce lots of crime and poverty, and then they'll be able to impose communism on that little island of Italy, and they're figuring out how to take over the whole big country of Italy, okay? And get rid of the Roman Vatican Christianity. Or they've actually taken over the Pope. You now kind of have like a fake Pope who's a piece of crap, okay? So hopefully, Christianity will survive, but the organized Catholic Church is in deep a bad situation, okay? What's happening in Ireland? Same thing that they did to Lampedusa. Ireland's a tiny little place, okay? After the famine in the 1840s, their population dropped from around 8 to 9 million and dropped down to about 4 million, okay? It's a little place. And what do they do in Ireland? Same thing. They've opened up the borders, the elites, the EU-related elites, and they're flooding the place. Again, why does a tiny little spot on the whole map of the world compared to a giant continent like Africa or some of these other places, in Europe and also in other places like, I don't know exactly all the names of the country, but all I know is I've heard the most common name in Ireland now. Well, I'm not even going to say it, but what I'm going to say is this. Ireland is being destroyed. They're bringing in busloads of military-age men at night into towns without the people's consent of the town, and they're just taking over these places. And this is being done, like I told you, it's part of a worldwide communist plan to get rid of all white Christian societies. The reason is the communists are smart, okay? They know the only thing that could prevent them from imposing communism, slavery on the entire world is the white male Christian population. That's it. So their number one target is get rid of the white male Christian population. They figure the females and all the other ethnic groups are easy to control. That's their attitude. Whether you agree with them or not, that is the belief of the Democratic Party, Communist Party, which is really, like I said, the American branch of the Communist Party. Okay, so they're doing the same thing that happened to Lampedusa, Italy, is happening to Italy, it's happening to France, and it's happening to the United States too for the people who studied it and looked at it, okay? Real immigration will be like somebody who's got a talent. They'll say, okay, we'll bring this person to our country. We will benefit from having their talent, okay? There's a reason to have some immigration. But massive immigration of military-age men, that's called an invasion, okay? Illegal aliens coming in to destroy a country. And they're going to cause anarchy. They emptied out the jails in Central America. And once they cause anarchy in the USA, the political elites are going to say, okay, you want us to, tone this down? Well, you're going to have to give up your freedom. Get your butt into the 15-minute city. Do as you're told. Shut your mouth. None of this free speech BS. Okay, so here's, the four horsemen of the apocalypse, and we've got them all. We're heading into massive famine this winter. We've got plenty of pestilence, and they're trying to get us into a war with Russia, and who knows what else. I've heard that China is circling Taiwan. What's that going to lead to, okay? Ben Franklin, when the constitution of a free society is dissolved, tyranny is erected in its ruins. GW, when freedom of speech is taken away, the population are led like sleep, dumb and silent to their slaughter. Okay? And then hopefully now there's talks about trying to get us into a conflict with Russia, which is going to put, it's going to do the same thing like Ukraine. Ukraine was specifically designed to kill off the white Christian men in Ukraine so the country could be taken away from them. Okay? And that's what happened. Okay? And the so-called leader of Ukraine, basically shut down the churches over there. Brutal dictator, evil liar. Okay? Okay, here's socialism. Here's so-called liberalism. It's the exact opposite of what it claims to be. All of their ideas are so good that they have to be mandatory. You've always got a fist in your face. All right, now here's a quote by Malcolm Muggeridge, who's this real smart guy who started out as an atheist in the early 1900s and initially was enthusiastic about Russia and its transition into communism. But when he went and visited the place and started to study it, he was shocked at what a brutal disaster it was. They killed 65 million Christians in Russia in the 1900s. And listen to what he has to say. Education is the great mumbo jumbo and fraud of our age. It purports to equip us to live and is prescribed as a universal remedy for everything, from juvenile delinquency to premature senility. But for the most part, it only serves to enlarge the stupidity of people, inflate their conceit, enhance credulity, and put those subjected to it at the mercy of brainwashers with printing presses, radio, and television at their disposal. It has been said that when human beings stop believing in God, they believe in nothing. But it's worse than that. They believe in anything. How beautiful it all seemed at the time of the Enlightenment, that man, triumphant, would bring to pass the earthly paradise whose groves of academia would ensure the realization forever of peace, of plenty, and of beatitude in practice. But what a nightmare of wars, famines, and follies was to result therefrom. So the final conclusion would surely be that whereas other civilizations had been brought down by attacks from barbarians from without, our civilization had the unique distinction of training its own destroyers at its own educational institutions and then providing them with facilities for propagating their destructive ideology far and wide, all at the public expense. Thus did Western man decide to abolish himself, creating his own boredom out of his own affluence, his own vulnerability out of his own strength, his own impotence out of his own erotomania, himself blowing the trumpet that brought the walls down of his own city, and having convinced himself that he was too numerous, he labored with pill and scalpel to make himself fewer. Until at last, having educated himself into imbecility, and polluted and drugged himself into stupefaction, he keeled over, a weary, battered old brontosaurus, and became extinct. That's Malcolm Muggeridge from The End of Christendom. Okay, just a little bit more here. This is the last slide. A couple wise words from Alexander Solzhenitsyn. He lived from 1918 to 2008. He had been in the Russian military, and he was like one of the leaders in a tank squadron that went into Germany, into Berlin, and were victorious over the Germans. And he went back to Russia expecting to be celebrated as a hero. Instead, he was, thrown into prison, told that he had been corrupted by the West, and he spent a good amount of years in prison. But he got out, and anyways, here's what he has to say. If I was asked today to formulate as concisely as possible what was the main cause of the ruinous revolution that swallowed up some 65 million of our people, 65 million white Christians, I could not put it more accurately than to repeat, men had forgotten God. That is why all this has happened. The press has become the greatest power in the Western world. Modern society is hypnotized by socialism. It is prevented by socialism from seeing the mortal danger that it is in. And one of the greatest dangers of all is that you have lost your sense of danger. You cannot even see where it's coming from as it moves swiftly towards you. To destroy a people, you must first sever its roots. Why do you think they topple all those statues and rename all these places? Atheism was at the core of the entire Soviet system. Atheism is what makes it possible. You must understand that the Bolsheviks hated Christians. They tortured and slaughtered millions of Russian Christians without a shred of remorse. It cannot be overstated. Bolshevism committed the greatest human slaughter of all time. The generations now coming out of Western schools are unable to distinguish good from bad. Even those words are unacceptable. This causes impaired thinking ability. See how this looks pretty familiar? We can't even say what's the difference between a man and a woman nowadays, or we're scared we're going to get in trouble. It's ridiculous. Okay, continuing with Alexander Solzhenitsyn. For us in Russia, communism is a dead dog. For many in the West, it is still a living lion. There is no communism. There's only communists. You should question everything. You should question everything. The enemies of the human race respect the big fist and nothing else. The harder you slug them, the safer you will be. Communism will never be halted by negotiations or through the machinations of détente. It can only be halted by force from without or by disintegration from within. That which is called humanism, but which could more correctly be called irreligious anthropocentrism, cannot give answers to the most essential questions of life. Okay, so that's a good point. So what he's basically saying, all this Zen Buddhist crap, I'm going to, meditate, that's all wimpy bullshit, okay? Talking to yourself, staring at the wall, saying Om is not going to unite people and inspire them and make them want, to maintain freedom in the United States, okay? You have to say, look, we come from a great culture, the tradition of the ancient Greeks, the Romans, the Renaissance, and we produced the greatest art, literature, and science in the history of the world, and we should be proud of it, and we should celebrate it, and we should respect it, and maintain our traditions, and we want freedom and free speech in this country, okay? And if you don't stand up for that, you're going to lose all of it, and we're rapidly losing all of it, and, this year, it looks like we might lose all of it, and this might be the end of the free world, but let's hope that enough people realize what's going on and say, look, we want to keep our freedom. And hopefully we'll keep it. Okay, so let's just continue here with Alexander Solzhenitsyn. He says, it is within the power of writers and artists to do much more than that. It is within the power of writers and artists to defeat the lie. That is the way to help men understand. It is art and it is literature. Alexander Solzhenitsyn, who lived from 1918 to 2008. So yeah, that's kind of one of the points why it's so valuable to know about the history of Western culture, civilization, literature, and art, because it's magnificent. It's the best in the world. It's not the best in the world by a little bit, by 10%, 20%. No, it is orders of magnitude better than anything else created by any other civilization, okay? And you should be aware of that, okay? Because you want that, okay? If you've got Christianity, you'll have the most beautiful paintings ever in the history of the world in your museums. If you've got modern atheistic Darwinism, you're going to have statues of feces and urinals and all this junk, while you are sent off to slavery, okay? So take your pick. Anyways, I hope this was helpful.